Hello and welcome to the Election Arena, where every week advocates from the left and the right will square off and discuss the most pressing issues facing Israel and the upcoming September elections. I'm Zohar Tal, chairman of the Oz Zionist Foundation. With me today is Rabbi Eric Escherman, founder and director of the Israeli human rights organization Torah Tzedek, Torah of Justice. Let's get started.
Netanyahu's decision to deny us entry might be unprecedented for members of Congress, but it is the policy of his government when it comes to Palestinians.
על פי חוק, איננו מוכנים לקבל בתוך ישראל אנשים שקוראים להחרמתה של מדינת ישראל, בעצם פועלים לדה-לגיטימציה של מדינת היהודים.
You know, Rabbi, in my opinion, it is very simple because it is obvious that these two Congresswomen represent an industry of lies that unfortunately penetrated the US Congress. So I'm very curious to hear how are you going to defend them while you know that they're actually here to harm Israel?
So I would simply say denying people entry because of their views is not our values. It was pointless and it was damaging. It's not our values. We are a people in a country that relishes and invites debate and the exchange of opinions, even opinions that we really don't agree with.
Do you really think that they were here to debate?
Two, it was, and I'll explain it. Two, it was pointless because there was nothing that they said or would have said here that they can't say there. There is nothing that they could have accomplished by being here that they can't do. And in fact, because we gave them a home run, it was even worse. Finally, you know, if they had been here, they were also going to meet with Israeli human rights organizations. I might have met with them. In other words, yes, they would have seen and heard firsthand about things they already know about, some of the grave human rights violations here. They would have also seen the best of our Israeli democracy. They would have seen that there are Israeli organizations, people like myself, a rabbi, a Zionist, who believes in the state of Israel, who is dedicated to fighting injustice. And we missed it and all of that. It was against our values, it was pointless, and it actually did a lot of, not to mention the fact that AIPAC, people that our job is to defend Israel, were upset because it is setting up where someday the Democrats may be in power and we're going to be in trouble.
Look, I understand Democrats that are upset. Okay, U.S. Democrat Party representatives that are upset. But from our side of it, they weren't here to see other organizations. They wanted to go to Temple Mount with Palestinian authorities, officials. They didn't want to meet any Israelis. They would have met B'Tselem, perhaps.
They were absolutely going to meet Israelis.
Not more than that. And you know, the fact that they wanted something else, I think it's a bold lie. And a good point of view to see it is Rashida's Tlaib visit to her grandmother. She asked to visit her on a humanitarian basis. That request was granted. And after it was granted, she said, no, I don't want to do that. Why didn't she want to do that?
She said,
because she preferred not to honor her grandmother with a visit in order to not miss one day of hatred against Israel.
If the condition was that she couldn't say anything about what she thought, that's, again, we gave them a home run. They gave them a home run. There's nothing. She said, what she was able to do would look much worse by not letting them in than if we let them in. Anything she could have seen and said would not be as bad as what happened.
She would say that anyways.
That's the point, exactly.
So there's no reason for us to cooperate with that. And you know, she wasn't coming to educate herself. That was what I wanted to say. She wasn't here to learn about Israel or about the conflict. You and I know that this conflict is complex, right? She wasn't here in order to learn about its complexity. No, she just wanted to come and say whatever she wanted, and there is no reason for us to cooperate with that.
If she had been here and also met with Israeli human rights organizations, Israelis fighting the same kinds of injustices that she opposes, it would have been something that maybe she isn't fully aware of. It would have been very helpful, and again, all I have to say is how AIPAC was so upset about this. We simply shot ourselves in the foot. So the question is whether Israel should be actively trying to encourage people to emigrate from Gaza. On the face of it, I don't have a problem with that. It's one of the most high population density places in the world. Some people call it the largest open-air prison in the world. The question is, do we do it through the carrot or the stick? If there are incentives for people to leave and people choose of their own free will to do so, I don't have a problem with that. There should be no illusion that we're going to get Gaza to empty out and solve all of our problems that way. I think that many people on the right wing of the political map from the Likud have said that there will be no solution if we don't, in addition to having a military defense, if we don't also take measures to relieve the misery there. And we have to do that, but I don't have any a priori problem with using positive incentives. Of course, not oppression, not negative incentives to encourage people to leave.
Yeah, you know, I don't understand the criticism about that because, in my opinion, Israel, it sounds weird, but Israel is actually the only country that really cares about the population. Because you see the United Nations, they are fine through UNRWA. They're not rehabilitating any of the refugees or their descendants or their families. They're just keeping the status as it is. You see the European Union or other countries are financing the Palestinians through the organization, through their administration. Nothing gets to the population itself. So Israel is actually probably the only country that really cares about the population and doing something about it. So while giving them the opportunity to live freely, I think makes perfect sense, besides the measures that will have to be taken against the terror in the Gaza Strip.
Well, I think to say that we really care about Gazans is a little bit exaggerated, although we once did
Don't you care about the Gazans?
We once did focus groups and found that most Israelis actually want nothing bad for Gazans. They think about themselves first. However, my fellow human rights organization, Gisha, has shown how we've really do everything we can to punish Gazans by regulating what we let in and out in ways that has nothing to do with our security interests. In 2008, the Israeli government said to the High Court that it is okay to, as long as we don't go below starvation level, it's okay to reduce the caloric intake of Gazans as a weapon of war. And even when Likud ministers have said we need to build a port where we check what's going in and then let things in, Prime Minister Netanyahu and then Defense Minister Lieberman quelched that, and that's unfortunate. So I don't think we can say that we're being so beneficent to the Gazans.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not sure that Lieberman represents the right wing in Israel anymore. But in addition, you forgot to mention that Israel lets hundreds of Palestinians to enter for medical services in Israel every day. We take care of many issues that nobody cares about. We do that. So you can't say that we don't care.
Again,
we do care. We have a problem. The major problem is rockets flying from Gaza into Israel, and that has to be dealt with. So, as you said, Israelis don't hate the Gazans, but we need to take care of our security first.
The fact is, if you look at some of the reports from Gisha, from Physicians for Human Rights, from Moked, some of my fellow human rights organizations, you'll see a remarkable cooperation between Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and Egypt, to the detriment of Gazans in terms of everything that has to do with their medical access. We do, thank God, let some people in, but all those forces combine, in fact, to prevent other people who need to get in from doing so.
By the way, do you think that these congresswomen that are against Israel know what we do for the Gazans?
Well, if they had a chance to meet with some of us, they would hear both sides. They would hear what we do, and they would hear what we don't do.
גוש עציון הוא קונצנזוס, גוש עציון הוא חלק ממדינת ישראל. לא צריך לחכות לפיגועים כדי לעשות את זה, וצריך לנצל את התקופה שיש לנו נשיא אוהד בבית הלבן ולהחיל את החוק הישראלי על גוש עציון.
Okay, so Israel rule on the Etzion bloc, or annexing Gush Etzion. That is something that Ayelet Shaked talked about. And in my opinion, there is no question, Gush Etzion is a consensus. The vast majority of Israelis don't see it as a separate place or as occupied or as a place that will not be part of Israel in any future agreement. Nevertheless, I think that she went a minor step too far because Israel is now going through elections that are due in September, and I think that at this point, doing anything like that is going too far. I do think that after the elections, if hopefully a right-wing government will be established, that will be the time to do that and take care of that, because I imagine that you know and understand that the way that things are today without Israeli rule on Israeli citizens is a problem, and it makes all kind of weird solutions come into life, and that's not the way the things should be.
There's no doubt that that among all the different regions in the occupied territories, one of the ones where there is most consensus would be Gush Etzion, because of the fact, among other reasons, that there were Jewish communities there before 1948. However, I don't think that many Israeli Jews would want to adopt a principle where everybody goes back to where they were before 1948, because we would definitely end up on the short end of the stick. Secondly, there's just one little detail, one little problematic detail, which is it's not about us only. And it's not something that we Israelis can make unilateral decisions on. There are different sides here, and just because it's a consensus or a closer consensus among many Israelis doesn't give us the right to do it.
I'm just curious, do you really think that on the other side there is someone who you can negotiate with? There is someone that you can get an agreement with?
One of the biggest lies is that there's no one to talk to. As someone who works with Palestinians every day, not the politicians, I don't want to be under the thumb as a human rights organization of the Palestinian Authority any more than I want to be under the thumb of the Israeli government. But when I work with average Palestinians, when I work with Palestinian civil society, I know that there are many people that we can talk to.
But they are not the decision makers.
That was even. But that's precisely the point. We do everything to ensure. When Ariel Sharon decided to do the disengagement, after saying that he would turn over every stone if there was a possibility of peace, but there was no one to talk to. And then just then there was the Noseba Ayalon Accords, the Geneva Accords, and he couldn't say that anymore. And that's what kind of pushed him into needing to do something. The fact is, it's a very convenient lie, which we encourage and even help create, that there's no one to talk to. There are absolutely people to talk to.
I totally disagree, by the way. I think that's the only truth. I think that even if you send today Nitzan Horvitz, or before him Zehava Galon, to negotiate, and they definitely want to negotiate and reach an agreement, two-state solution or whatever, even if you send them to negotiate, there will be no agreement. So I know that on a daily basis, you get along with Palestinians. That's on the people's level. That's understandable. But when it gets to decision makers, it's a total new world. And they are not there. We are there. They're not there.
You know, opinion polls have shown for years and years and years a same majority on both sides that say we want peace, and even a larger majority on both sides say we want peace, but they don't. So the final question, I believe, is actually connected to the previous one in terms of is a two-state solution still viable? Would it help? Is it even possible at this point to eliminate all of the settlements? First of all, as a human rights organization, representative of a human rights organization, I accept that the Fourth Geneva Convention applies, which in the occupied territories, Israel, of course, does not accept that, and therefore, I believe that by definition, it is illegal for us to move our population into the occupied territories, even though I, as a religious Jew, would like to see Jews in all of the land of Israel. Having said that, from a human rights perspective, we don't have a position on whether the settlement should stay or go, whether it should be a 1 or a 2 or a 10-state solution, whether settlement should be eliminated or be incorporated in Israel, or whether settlers should become Palestinian citizens, or any of all the other possibilities out there. That's beyond my mandate. But I will say, I, for many, many years, was always said that those who have said the two-state solution is dead were very premature. Today, I actually think that the classic two-state solution, 67 borders, eliminating all the settlements, is no longer, or is almost dead, if not dead. There are variations on the theme. What I hear, it's interesting, when I talk to average Palestinians, not the politicians in Ramallah, when I talk to average Palestinians who would have said just a few years ago, we want to see the settlements go. Today, I hear from them, we can live with them if they're willing to let us live as well. And so the question becomes, so we've essentially, by creating some of this infrastructure, we may have eliminated the possibility of anything but a one-state solution. And if that's the case, the question is, will it be a just and democratic one state or an apartheid state? And that's still in front of us.
Look, first of all, you pointed out one of the major internal conflicts in Israel, and that is that we can't even agree about the facts. For example, whether it is legal for Israel to build settlements or not. I'm not going to refer to that now. I want to talk about the political thing, because here you see a Labour Party Knesset member that says that Israel can or should, in some situation, dismantle settlements. Now, that means that the Labour Party went far to the left, and I think that is one of the reasons that it is now much less relevant. That's why it shrank throughout the 2.5 decades or so. It just became irrelevant. So that is one thing. The second thing, he talked about the Clinton package, let's say, right? I think the Clinton package is also irrelevant because the Palestinians said no. So even though you think there is someone to talk about or anyone to talk with, they said no. They could have taken the deal. They said no. And the last thing, and I think the most important part, and in that view, I think that we agree, and that is that the era of displacing Jews from their homeland is over. There is no realistic dismantling settlement situation that can actually be viable and relevant nowadays.
Well, the question is if we're also past the era of displacing Palestinians. because that's what I deal with every day. You know, we've what I call the legalization of theft law, where we said it is if settlements are built on land that belongs to Palestinians, which we acknowledge belongs to Palestinians, but it was done innocently, and it's never innocent. Believe me, it's never innocent.
But we
then we don't have to
disagree
give
about
it
that
back.
as well.
We don't have to give it back. And I could just go from example by example, not to mention that the fastest pace of takeover of Palestinian land is agriculture, where I see it every day. We prevent with our guns from Palestinians to get to lands. Then we say, we start working it, and then we say it's ours.
I'll tell you two things. First of all, no one said that it's a private property. There are many places that they claim that it's private, but it's not. That's one thing. The other thing is that agriculture becomes less and less relevant even for the Palestinians because they advanced under Israeli rule. They are now less and less agricultural and more educated and going into other occupations as the rest of the world, at least the rest of the Western world.
That was true until the Second Intifada, and people could no longer get permits into Israel.
Okay, who started the Second Intifada?
But I'm saying it's just not true that agriculture is important. Whoever's fault it is, it's just not true that it's not important.
So eventually, we do see the settlements there. I don't think anyone will dismantle them, and we can continue debate whether it is a Palestinian land or an undeclared land or something else. But the fact is that they're there. Even the Supreme Court approved most of the cases that settlements were built on in the Judea and Samaria.
The law I cited only refers to places where the government of Israel recognizes that it's private Palestinian land. Where there's no agreement, that's a different story.
This is all the time we have for this week's Election Arena. I'm Zohar Tal, and I want to thank Rabbi Eric Escherman for joining me today, and you, our viewers, for tuning in. Until next time.